imagine that Dino had to... Hello everybody, welcome to number 27. I'm Jack and today I'm going to be talking to you about this amazing Fiat Dino Spider. Now, not only does this particular car have an incredibly interesting history, but I'm going to tell you why Fiat Dino Spiders in general are actually possibly better cars than the Ferrari 246 Dino that everybody loves and makes a huge fuss about. There's three ways in which this Fiat is actually a better car than its Ferrari sibling, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But before then, I'm going to give you a bit of history on the car, and I'm going to talk to you about why this particular one is just so special. Now, Enzo Ferrari was not known as the nicest man on earth. However, when it came to his son Dino, it seems that he genuinely did love him, and he was heartbroken when Alfredo died in 1956. And I think he was keen for a legacy to continue. Now, Dino had collaborated with Vittorio Jano, an incredible engineer of Hungarian descent, to produce the 1500cc V6 that was then raced in Formula 2. However, regulations for Formula 2 changed in 1965 and a minimum of 500 units had to be produced every year for that engine to be eligible for racing. This led to a partnership between Fiat and Ferrari. Fiat had the nous to produce the engines in a mass market way, but also at the time I think they needed a bit of a fillip in image. So that suited both companies absolutely perfectly. Now, there were two different versions of these engines used both in the Ferrari Dino and in this car, but we'll talk more about that in a minute. You will know that Pininfarina designed both this and the Ferrari Dino. However, this Fiat Dino was owned by Pininfarina himself. So he bought this car and he had it for the first year, and within that time he changed the colour. It was originally silver, but he changed it to a Ferrari colour which was called Blu Sera, which means night blue, and it's a darker hue than it is at the moment. That is because Pininfarina gifted this car to a very famous motoring journalist photographer called Bernard Cahier. When Bernard had it, he decided that he wanted to change it to this lighter blue. This is a Peugeot colour, it's called Blue Sigma. But before you get outraged, he sent it back to Pininfarina and Pininfarina resprayed it and changed it to this colour. To this day, this car has had no welding, no changes and nothing else. So the owner was telling me previously that if it wasn't for this provenance, he would probably go back to that silver colour, which is really rare in Fiat Dinos. However, to be honest, I am glad he can't because I love it. It's perfect. It's not too dark. It's just got that nice blue hue. It's incredible. Not only that, but this Fiat Dino was featured in a really seminal book, a book that is now worth hundreds of pounds, believe it or not. So it's pictured inside, and you can see here it has a California number plate. That is because Bernard Cahier was at that time working in California and wanted to import the car. The number plates were changed, it was registered in California, but it never actually went there and it stayed in Europe. I mentioned to you earlier that there was three ways in which this Fiat Dino is more special and perhaps better than the Ferrari Dino. Yes, I did really say that. Now, the first thing is, the Fiat Dino was actually rarer. So altogether, around 1,500 examples of these cars were built. Whereas the Ferrari Dino numbers about 4,000 in total production. You also have to consider that it's much more likely that the Ferrari survived. Being a Ferrari, many more would have been kept alive and used less than their Fiat cousins. The second thing, and the second reason, is that they are cheaper. Now, depending on where you look and which particular model, the Fiat Dino is about a third of the price of the Ferrari. There are two different models of the Ferrari Dino. There is the 2 litre and the 2.4. The 2 litre, and in terms of value, it's reversed with the Ferrari with the two models. The 2 litre Fiat Dino, which was also all alloy bodied, is worth about double what a normal Ferrari Dino is worth. So normal Dino, decent one, is 300,000 and above. The 2 litre is worth double that. With the Fiat Dino, there's the 2 litre version and the 2.4. The 2 litre is actually quite a different car, I've been told. It's not just that it has the smaller engine, which has the alloy block, whereas this has the bottom end is actually cast iron. But the car itself differs quite markedly in the way it drives, also due to the fact that this has a wider track and it has independent rear suspension, whereas the 2 litre has a solid rear axle. The third way in which this is better than the Ferrari sister it has is in the drive. Now, I've driven Dinos before, and although they have their charms, like my 308, I was never really that impressed. And I have to confess, I haven't driven one of these before, but I've spoken to lots of people who have, and who say that it is a better drive, and I'm going to find out right now, but I suspect that they will be right. So part of the beauty of the Ferrari Dino is the gearbox. And you'd think that at least in that way, there's no way that this car could compete. However, it doesn't have a gated gearbox maybe, but that gear change is lovely. Now the driving position is typically Italian, so you have your knees up in close to the wheel, and there's plenty of room in terms of length, so I've moved it back, but then arms outstretched and legs sort of crunched up. But the pedals are offset and they're very cramped together, so I'm glad I didn't wear trainers today, because it's not easy. It's not easy to drive with that pedal box, and it's really crunched up on the side as well, so I'm touching the side tunnel as I'm trying to operate the throttle. The dash reminds me a bit of a 124 Spider, but actually it's quite nice in here. Do miss that gated shift obviously, but that's a Ferrari thing. It would look silly in this particular car. Now it drives so nicely, this is just fabulous. I think if you can picture yourself driving on the Amalfi Coast, God, I would much rather have this frankly than the Ferrari Dino. This is just a fabulous car. Now the thing about the Ferrari Dino as well is that because it's a Ferrari, the performance is quite underwhelming, whereas on a proper convertible like this in a Fiat, the performance, especially for the time, feels just fantastic. Now the 2 litre versions were supposed to put out 160 horsepower, whereas the 2.4s were supposed to put out 180. Respectively, the Ferrari versions of each car are supposed to be putting out 15 to 20 horsepower more, but that is just rubbish. It's absolutely not true. Also, the 2.4 of this has a 5th gear very close to the 4th. The owner of this car has put a longer 5th on it, and the suspicion is very much that the only reason why they did that is because it would have actually been faster than the Ferrari cousin, so they artificially kept top speed low with a low 5th gear. So I've been told that the 2 litre is actually a sweeter steering car than this. Maybe it's because of the narrower track. I don't know why. It's lighter perhaps. This does, apparently this has got quite heavy steering. I don't find it heavy. It is heavy at lower speeds, but at normal speeds it is absolutely lovely. I get loads of feel. It reminds me very much of the Alphas of this time as well. It's what I would call an oiled feel to it. Fantastic, lovely steering. Unfortunately, it's just rained, which makes me even more nervous than I otherwise would be, even with a car like this as well. Not only is it worth a lot of money, but it is a very special car, as we've said. And the 2.4 litres in the Dinos, again, it's the opposite to the Ferrari Dino. Far fewer of these were made than of the 2 litre. Now, one of my biggest criticisms when I drove the Ferrari Dino was that the ride really felt quite brittle. And again, I know it's supposed to be a sports car, but this rides so much better. It feels so much more fluid. It might be that on a nice, smooth Italian road, the Dino would work a lot better. But on these British country roads, the Fiat, to me, it is a more pleasant car to drive. Oh, I love that. I wish it was dry and I could give this a bit more of its head, but the engine is mega. Love it. Absolutely love it. I love the way it drives. I love the way it looks. Like, if it was down to me and if it wasn't about value and you couldn't sell it and someone said, would you rather have this or would you rather have a Dino? Sorry, a Dino. Would you rather have this or would you rather have the Ferrari version? I honestly think I would prefer to have one of these. It's better to drive, it works better. I know that Ferrari Dinos do come alive if you drive them hard, but I don't tend to push cars really hard anyways, and just for everyday driving, I think this is it's just better. I love it. The owner of this car has never let anyone else drive it apart from his son George, so I'm so privileged. Thank you so much, guys, for letting me drive this today, for having done the video. I so appreciate it. They also have a 2-litre version, so I think I'm going to go back and do a video on that because apparently it drives completely different to the 2.4. Thank you so much to everybody for watching. I really appreciate it. If you need to contact me, Instagram is the best way. Please do subscribe if you haven't already. Plenty more Ferrari content to come as well.